The secret World War II survival tricks were so effective, soldiers were ordered to keep them hidden forever. War doesn't just test courage, it tests creativity. In the chaos of World War II, survival wasn't always about who had the biggest gun or the strongest fortifications. It often came down to ingenuity, those small, clever tricks that turned desperate moments into, well, miraculous escapes. Some of these methods were so effective, they were deliberately kept quiet, logged as restricted in field manuals, or passed on only through whispers among troops. And here's the thing, many of these so-called classified hacks still work today. When the world was burning, soldiers had to think fast, improvise, and use every scrap of knowledge just to make it through one more freezing night or one more hungry dawn. These weren't theoretical tactics. They were born out of necessity, from men who had nothing but grit, a few supplies, and, you know, an unbreakable will to live. Let's dive into 10 of the most fascinating survival secrets from the Second World War. Tricks so powerful they became the lifelines of millions, and in some cases the kind of knowledge military command didn't want freely circulating. Disease was one of the deadliest enemies in World War II. In muddy trenches and remote jungles, infections killed almost as many men as bullets did. To fight that unseen threat, soldiers were issued a special bar of carbolic soap. Dark red, pungent, and packed with phenol, a substance that killed bacteria on contact. But this wasn't just for washing hands. Troops used it to sterilize wounds, clean surgical tools, and even disinfect canteens when water sources were contaminated. Losing a bar could mean a slow death from infection or dysentery. That simple soap became a soldier's invisible armor against the silent killers that thrived in war's filth. Lighting a fire behind enemy lines could be suicide. Flames and smoke gave away your position in seconds. So soldiers came up with an ingenious fix, turning an empty tin can into a stealth stove. By punching holes along the sides and placing a small candle or solid fuel inside, the can would trap and concentrate the heat while shielding the flame from view. Soldiers could warm soup, toast bread, or heat up canned rations without producing a visible glow. It was quiet, simple, and nearly undetectable. Even today, survivalists and campers still use variations of this covert cooking method. You might not think coffee could save lives, but in war, morale is everything. Coffee wasn't just a comfort, it was a mental weapon. Supplies were scarce, so soldiers often reused coffee grounds 2 or 3 times. When rations ran out, they toasted barley or chicory and mixed it in to stretch the flavour. It wasn't gourmet, but it gave men something they desperately needed, a taste of normalcy. Commanders knew this too. A hot cup of coffee, even weak and bitter, could keep soldiers grounded when everything else was chaos. It reminded them they were still human, still fighting for home. Clean water was almost impossible to find in the field. Rivers were often polluted with oil, blood, or bacteria. In desperate situations, soldiers learned to use what they had: bread. They would crumble a dense loaf into a cloth and pour dirty water through it, using the bread as a crude filter. It didn't kill bacteria, but it removed dirt and sediment, making the water safer to boil afterward. It was primitive, but it worked. That simple trick gave countless soldiers a fighting chance against dehydration and disease. Even non-smokers carried cigarettes during the war, and not just for nicotine. A single cigarette could open doors, buy time, or even save your life. In occupied territories, soldiers traded them for food, medicine, or crucial intelligence. Prisoners offered them to guards to earn a moment's distraction or goodwill. The act of sharing a smoke became its own kind of diplomacy. Small, human gestures in the middle of a brutal conflict. Cigarettes were more than habit. They were currency, leverage, and sometimes survival. It wasn't glamorous, but a small sewing kit, sometimes stitched into the lining of a uniform, was honestly a soldier's best friend. In freezing weather, a torn coat could lead to frostbite. In the tropics, a ripped mosquito net could mean malaria. Soldiers learned to stitch up clothing, repair boots, or even use the thread to make fishing lines. They patched up whatever they could, whenever they could. A few needles and a bit of thread might sound insignificant. But in a war where every resource mattered, it was as vital as a weapon. When matches were soaked and lighters refused to work, soldiers turned to a dirty but dependable solution: cloth soaked in grease, oil, or animal fat. Stored in small tins, these improvised fire starters could catch a spark even in pouring rain. The smell was awful, the smoke thick, but it burned long enough to dry wet wood and start a life-saving fire. On the Russian front, or in the frozen forests of Europe, that could mean the difference between a night's sleep and a soldier freezing to death before dawn. Salt wasn't just seasoning, it was survival. In the humid jungles of the Pacific, food spoiled within hours. Soldiers used salt to preserve meat and fish, rub into leather boots to prevent mold, and even pack into boots overnight to draw out moisture. It prevented rot, reduced infection, and kept supplies usable longer. It's no exaggeration to say that salt was as valuable as gold in some field camps. Without it, men and materials both would literally rot away. Uniform buttons had a way of disappearing at the worst possible times. And in war, something as simple as a missing button could mean the difference between warmth and exposure. So, soldiers improvised, rolling wet bread into a small ball, flattening it and poking 2 holes through the middle. Once dried in the sun, the makeshift button hardened enough to hold fabric together. Crude? Absolutely, but it worked, and that's what mattered. In an environment where resources were scarce, even a lump of bread could become a piece of survival gear. Perhaps the most legendary trick of all came disguised as a deck of cards. To any guard, they looked harmless. But these special decks were issued by Allied intelligence agencies to prisoners of war. When dampened, the cards could be peeled apart to reveal sections of hidden maps showing routes to freedom. Prisoners used them to plan escapes through enemy territory. The concept was so successful it was later revived during the Cold War. Behind the games and smokes, soldiers carried secrets capable of saving lives. What makes these tricks so remarkable isn't just their practicality, it's the mindset behind them. These men didn't have endless supplies or fancy equipment. They had grit, resourcefulness, and a refusal to quit. They learned to turn trash into tools, desperation into innovation. That same adaptability is what defines true survival, then and now. Today, technology gives us convenience at the touch of a button, but the core lessons remain the same. Ingenuity, adaptability, and a calm mind are still the most powerful survival tools anyone can possess. The same candle stove that kept a soldier alive in 1944 can still keep a camper warm in 2025. The same bread filter that saved a life in a muddy trench could help someone purify water in a disaster today. These aren't just stories from the past, they're blueprints for endurance. And they remind us that the most powerful weapon a person can carry isn't in their hands, it's in their mind. If you found these hidden wartime tricks as fascinating as we did, don't forget to hit subscribe and share this with someone who loves history as much as you do. The past still holds secrets. And here at the Forgotten Fronts, we're here to uncover every single one of them.